Did you know that you could go into a full-on nomadic world harvesting rampage with the Vasari Exodus faction in Sins of a Solar Empire 2 and leave planets behind as empty husks, gathering insane amounts of resources and obliterating every other faction with an unstoppable fleet that acts as your home? No, neither did I, until I read a comment about it on Reddit, including a mini instruction on the most important aspects of such a playthrough. So before I give you a full rundown of how you can play in this style yourself, I just want to thank Stardog for sponsoring this video and supporting Ironclad Studio in making this absolutely amazing sequel. I also recently learned we are going to finally get a single player campaign and learn who is hunting the Vasari across the universe, with the introduction of the 4th faction, meaning we are going to have fun times ahead of us, my fellow Space RTS fans. For the style of a nomadic Vasari playthrough, I picked one of the massive 10-player maps called Buzzsaw and set every game option to very high, making sure to turn off all the alternate victory conditions. Then I customized the lobby, setting up 3 teams of 3 players, 8 of them being hard AI and each team made up of a single faction, while mixing sub-factions and AI aggressiveness. For convenience sake, you probably want to set yourself in the middle of your 2 allies, giving you secure flanks to pump resources into research and development. At least that is how I like to play team games with AI. The start is of course standard Vasari, with your capital ship jumping into a planetary well and colonizing a ferrous type of a planet. My build order starts with upgrading mining to increase resource income, and then building 1 research lab of each type, alongside the assembly factory, so I can add more ships to my fleet. Since I have plenty of starting resources, I will also set another upgrade for planet mining and upgrade the speed at which research is done with a planetary improvement item. Since the next closest planet is an ice ball, I will need to research Arctic occupation to be able to colonize it as soon as I clear out the neutral ships around it. So this is where I send my fleet to, flagship and 3 starting ships. When it comes to the other Empire tech, I will go with the Emissary Outreach to start producing influence points, molecular assembly to reduce orbital structure build time, and of course orbital extraction to start mining on asteroids around these planets. The surface mining upgrade is also going to be very useful to increase my income from these planets. This one has more ships defending it, but the capital ship can take care of them all. What will help it and my other ships are the first warfare tech upgrades, like the improved pulse concentrators, reinforced nanite conduits, and the Sul-Surak defender ship. On this map, the minor factions are exclusively pirates, so relations with them will give me some benefits, and it is a way to spend my influence points. With research now in full swing, I will need to boost it on my homeworld and increase the number of orbital slots so I can construct the maximum number of asteroid mining platforms. The labor camp upgrade in the Empire Research tree is going to be one of the bases of my Vasari economy, and I will upgrade it fully as I unlock the next research tiers. Additionally, unlocking the full potential of a ferrous planet type might even be more advantageous at the start, and I changed my mind on the research order here. You can tell me what you consider to be the best tech order in the comments below, as I am definitely not going to claim to know which is best in every situation. As soon as my first assembly factory is built, I start to order up new ships to increase my main fleet power, and this is something I advise doing all the time, of course while still leaving enough resources for planet upgrades and new tech research. You need these ships to conquer the best planets as fast as possible, so use every metal and crystal at your disposal. I won't be talking much about tech research in the rest of the video, except to mention a few technologies which are crucial to this type of a nomadic world harvesting playthrough. So now that I have cleaned up the planet's guards, my capital ship colonizes this ice ball, and it will also be a fantastic source of crystal, both on planet and from asteroids, which is what the Vasari faction sorely needs. The first planetary upgrade will be labor camps on this and all my future colonized planets and asteroids, while I won't be able to upgrade planet-side mining a lot until I unlock the tech for full utilization of ice planets. And on that note, back on the homeworld, it is time to construct such asteroid miners on metal-rich asteroids and upgrade the civilian slots as needed, alongside more labor camps. Another thing that I'll be adding to every colonized body are the labs to boost research speed, especially because I want to keep my resources utilized as much as possible while unlocking new tech faster. Now it is time for a U-turn in my progress and to go the other way to colonize the lightly defended asteroids on the other phase lane path. These offer a mix of asteroids and very little crystal income, but what I get a chance to use is an item from the pirates to capture enemy ships with pirate boarding parties. Phase resonance is of course the Vasari's unique technology and mechanic, which I will use during this playthrough to boost their ships' combat capabilities. So on planets where I have some leftover civilian slots, I do construct phase resonators. This is how I progress down the phase lanes and colonize both the volcanic and oceanic worlds, and move fast to get my most important early game objective, the Crystalline planet, for obvious reasons, considering my lack of crystals and dependency on them for tech and upgrades as the Vasari. One luxury item I do afford myself, despite the current crystal shortage, is a combat upgrade for my capital ship. Now, I must admit, as I was making this video, I did have to restart a few times to get all the settings and objectives in the right order, and my allies even colonized the Crystalline planet right under my nose in one of these attempts. So do expect the same to happen to you as you try to pull off this kind of a playthrough. Saving often is something I always advise in these kinds of games, especially if you have unpredictable pirates at your doorstep like I do here. What is important is that you research the ship and starbase items, which give you points for Empire and Warfare tech once installed. This is a crucial requirement for making this nomadic playthrough work. And speaking of pirates, they gave me quite a scare as I left my newly colonized crystal planet undefended to try and help my Vasari allies, and they used that exact opportunity to attack. My fleet was just a few jumps away, and I had just added a few military platforms to the build order when they jumped in, planet bombardment ships and all. A loss like this, when I was to transition from early to mid-game, would have been a major setback, and I rushed back with my fleet. Naturally, I immediately targeted those bombardment ships, and I saved the planet with what looked to be 1 or 2% left on its health bar. A close call as it could have possibly been. You can bet I fortified the hell out of it after this close call and would later construct my first starbase here, but we will get to that part. Spending more influence with the pirates felt a bit empty after that point, but the third item is the pirate loot box, which is at least a productive way to spend influence points as it gives you a nice boost to all the resources, even credits, which the Vasari don't really use. At this point, I had already accumulated a nice boost from the phase resonance to my ships, while mostly upgrading their weapon stats. This is basically where the mid-game starts, with each alliance expanding up to the pirate bases in the middle and enemy-owned planets on their sides. One of my allies even lost a planet to the light blue tech, which is why I was trying to help him. Start of mid-game also marks the moment I start to explore the rare resources that could be found on planets I own using the planetary exploration upgrades. These cost a lot of crystal and basically required me to spend all my crystal, but it was worth it to gather the rare resources which I would need to increase the number of capital ships I had in my fleet. Next objective was an extension of that, as I would need at least one exotic factory to start operating, and I built it at my homeworld where it was the safest place for it. Unlocking the Starbase and all its upgrades was my next objective, as I wanted it to protect my Crystalline planet, letting my fleet move on and fight instead of staying there waiting for parts to come back. Since I still had only 2 capital ships, I spent their upgrade slots on making them stronger and didn't yet transfer my Empire and Warfare research upgrades on them. These upgrades for Starbases are expensive, some even requiring rare resources, not to mention that almost every such upgrade also requires lots of metal and crystal, but those at least I could get from pirate loot boxes and pay for them with influence. What made adding Empire and Warfare research upgrades on my capital ships worthwhile is first unlocking the tech which upgraded how many points these upgrades get you. The base upgrade gives just 1 point. The next tech upgrade of the ship item gives 2 points, at which point it becomes acceptable to spend ship slots on them, and later a tech upgrade increases points once more up to 4. At that stage, you no longer even need planets and labs, just ships with these upgrades, but we will get to that, as my ally and I had to defend his planet from a tech fleet from a single AI opponent that had no less than 8 capital ships. We did manage to give them a good spanking as they were running away from our combined fleet and even blow up a few of those capital ships. Now we come to another crucial element to this kind of a nomadic playthrough, having many Jusotra fabricator ships in your fleet, which can replenish lost corvettes and frigates on the spot, meaning you have no need for assembly factories. Another thing you have to get on your mobile empire is exotic refineries. These do take up valuable slots on capital ships, but you can't get more rare materials flowing for future upgrades without them once you start getting rid of planets. Yes, you will pick up some from destroyed enemy capital ships and planets, but you will be spending far more than that for upgrading your Titan, Starbases and capital ships. My ally and I keep up the pressure on the light blue tech player, and this is where I started to enjoy the cinematic feel of Sins 2, especially with the UI turned off using the Ctrl-Shift-Z key shortcut. I used this option extensively to capture a lot of such footage back when I was making the videos on Sins lore and factions, which you can watch by using the card up here on the right and down in the description below. The lone Marza Tech Dreadnought stood no chance against our combined might. Entire fleets jumping into enemy systems is another eye candy moment I can never get enough of in this game. But what I most wanted to show you is the usefulness of the last capital ship ability of the Vasari Evacuator, which when used on planets or large asteroids collects resources right from orbit, and there is no limit on how many ships you can have doing this to a planet at the same time. It is another element that makes a Nomad Vasari playthrough possible, as you can continually move and keep taking resources from your enemy. Not to mention the Tosurak raiders, who also keep producing resources as long as you keep attacking enemy infrastructure around planets with them. Next important tech for this playthrough is the mobile Rulership unlock, which is a ship item best used on a Titan, as it directly allows you to keep playing even if you don't own a single planet. At this point, I was already in the process of building my 7th capital ship. The first starbase was getting upgraded, and I was close to unlocking the tech to construct a Titan. Luckily, I was already swimming in resources due to low losses and continuous raiding of enemy planets and installations, so these expenses weren't a problem for my economy. And the ships I did lose were usually the smallest types, meaning they could be replenished by the Jusotra fabricator ships on the spot and inside the fleet itself, instantly joining combat as soon as they were constructed. Watching joint missile barrages of my allies' ship never gets old, at least for me. Not even tech starbases can hold long with hundreds of missiles hitting them over and over. Of course, you should always use the diplomacy screen and call on your allies to help you in offensives against enemies, as these are team matches after all. I am not sure how effective or doable this nomadic planet harvesting strategy would be in a free-for-all match, but let me know in the comments what you think, or have you tried it. Now, a really interesting moment happened at this point of the match as I noticed a notification about a Novalith warhead being detected. What happened was that while we were conquering the light blue tech planets, his ally, the green tech, was busy constructing a Novalith cannon. The target was my ally's new volcanic planet, and all I could do was bear witness to its obliteration as the warhead struck and demolished the colony. Suffice it to say, the retaliatory attack was swift and decisive, with not one, not two, but three of our Vasari fleets converging on the origin of that Novalith warhead. The starbase defending it was the first to go, surviving exactly 45 seconds from the first missile hits to its demolition. There were 18 capital ships in this combined execution style fleet and several hundred smaller ships of all classes. Both I and my AI allies built quite balanced fleets, something I prefer to do rather than finding an unbalanced fleet composition and exploiting that. During this mid-game, I was getting low on rare resources and even having 4 exotic refineries, most of them on my capital ships, wasn't enough to supply all my needs of my ship upgrades and tech research. Also, there was this mistake which I can't forgive myself, which was letting one of my capital ships fly through the pirate's base and it got blown up by overwhelming firepower before it could phase away. It was a real bummer and I could have prevented it had I used the UI setting for avoiding contested gravity wells in the advanced options UI. Finally, we are getting to the most fascinating part, the planet eating and the tech named Stripped to the Core. It is a planetary item upgrade, which has to be first researched, then equipped on a planet, and only then can you use it to remove all the normal and rare resources of a planet, but leave it completely useless for the rest of the match. Compared to this tech, a simple invasion and some planetary bombardment like I did to the second tech faction's homeworld is tickling the planet with a feather. But to actually do it, as I said, I first had to get that planetary item operational. Until that gets ready, I should talk about how to replenish lost capital ships with a nomadic fleet. One way is to give your Starbases the mobile fleet beacon upgrade item so you can construct new capital ships from them. Another is adding such a fleet beacon to a Titan class ship. That is of course just one of the many incredibly powerful upgrades and items these most massive ships can use. At about 2 hours into the playthrough, my Titan was finally ready, but I needed to give it those upgrades. This is the moment that this whole Vasari Exodus nomadic faction strategy comes together now, as I have all the elements in place to stop being bound to planets and become just a huge fleet that lives off eating planets and enemy orbital structures. Mobile, Rulership and the Fleet Beacon were a must upgrade for the Titan, while the Wave Modulator, Heavy Wave Cannons, the Phase Cannon, the Maw Enhancer, Resonance Amplifier and a Gravity Stabilizer all work to enhance its combat capabilities and are my personal preference. One more item, which I neglected to mention until now, is the one that allows you to deploy a new Orkulus Starbase even in enemy territory. This one is incredibly useful to support a big push against enemy planets and fleets deep inside enemy territory. This was the first planet on which I activated the core stripper item, and I was a bit impatient about when the animation would play out. I actually missed the main fireworks while enjoying the look of my new Titan as it glided through space and only witnessed the aftermath. Nothing was left for enemies or allies to claim after this. But have no fear, I had more planets on my hit list, so I have more than a few planet destruction animations to show you. With the fleet now self-sustaining, it was time to get rid of not just newly conquered planets, but my core planets as well, and later even my homeworld. Well, for the Vasari, it is more like a home far, far away from home. The only thing I wanted to use the few planets I had left was to construct a few more starbases and equip them with item upgrades, which would allow them to travel between planets using phase lanes. you can see just how majestic that looks here. Do note, you can only have one of your starbases in a planetary gravity well, so this other one is my allies. This is about the time the last remaining TEC player launched his own Titan ship, the Unkilan type, which has a planet bomb in its inventory. But before we get to blowing up Titans, I had to play a bit with my own Titan and its ability to jump short distances. That, alongside its upgraded mobility, make it look like a manta ray swimming in the ocean, and not a space warship weighing 1,000,000 tons. On the other side of the map, each of my new starbases was getting a very similar item upgrade treatment, where I prioritized extra weapon systems and armor with a few fleet support items. Quickly enough, I had my 4th starbase up and ready to gain upgrades. This is when I reduced several of my colonies to orbiting rubble and started the same process on almost every other one, including my current homeworld. This is something I did to every enemy planet or asteroid I captured as well. After sterilization comes colonization, and after colonization comes obliteration. At one point I had to divide my fleet, which reached maximum supply cap, into 2 fleets to make it more manageable and to be able to split them up to cover more enemy planets. But here you can see them combined, and a new starbase launched into an enemy gravity well on top of the 2 fleets. These proved most useful guarding planets and asteroids which I was about to strip to the core, as the enemy players could easily take them over while the item was getting ready and planet abandoned before stripping. And there goes my homeworld, finally, 2.5 hours later, which is actually slow from what I have heard. You can do this in about 1.5 hours. If you do manage to pull it off that fast, be sure to share your replay, I would love to watch it. So, just as I thought, I had the last TEC AI player on the ropes. They jumped into one of my newly conquered gravity wells and started bombing the crap out of one of my starbases. Now, I was sure it was not going to survive this, as my fleets were several jump points away. That wasn't how this fight went. Not only did the thing hold better than Hodor, it even pushed back, destroying a TEC capital ship in the process. When I zoom out, you can see just how many ships had surrounded it, but with its thick shields, armor and a metric ton of HP, it survived long enough for my fleet to arrive. Naturally, it got into the crippled state at this point, meaning it couldn't fight back anymore. But the Titan jumped in the middle of the TEC fleet and started blowing ships up right and left. The cavalry had arrived. Only then did I notice my ally and his Titan joining the party from another phase lane connection. This is when TEC capital ships started blowing up every 2 seconds and their fleet got annihilated in front of my crippled starbase they failed to destroy. But this was not the same fate that would find my other starbase, which I sent too close to the Advent front. Since the beginning of this playthrough, this was our first fight, and they were not kidding around like TEC. It took them just about 45 seconds to demolish a fully upgraded starbase with the kind of firepower their fleet had. 8 capital ships, 100 fighters, another 100 bombers, and almost as many missile ships. Just as before with the TEC and Novalith cannon, the revenge was quick and decisive, as my ally and I both used Titans and whole fleets to ambush their Advent allies and destroy a large section of that fleet. This is the part where I started to use my starbases far more offensively, even sending them alone into guarded enemy gravity wells, where they went one-on-one with enemy starbases and won. This is where the full power and impact of such a nomadic way of playing is revealed. As I have no homeworld or planets to protect, I never have to move my fleet back and forth between gravity wells and defensive or offensive fights. I just keep pushing into enemy territory, feeding my economy by raiding, sucking planets dry and stripping them to their core after taking them over. Even building defensive structures like stations becomes just another offensive weapon in my toolbox, instead of a very expensive world-sized paperweight if I am winning and have no need to protect my planets. While my allies chose to spend their time and resources on dealing with pirates at their home base to stop the raids coming their way while their fleets are away, I'm like, pirates who? I had nothing for them to pirate. Now I had some unfinished business with the fleet that tried to take down my starbase a little while ago, and I finally managed to run them down in this volcanic planet gravity well my ally had taken over some time ago. Their fleet totaled 12 capital ships, some already damaged, a Titan of their own, while I had not just my Titan and a space station, but a dozen capital ships same as them. But this was a very uneven fight, as I took them by surprise while their fleet was strung out across the whole gravity well from one phase lane connection to the other. This is the worst possible way to fight another fleet, as you end up fighting with a few ships at a time depending on their weapons range, while the enemy fleet is in front of you and firing on all guns. I think this is just an error in the AI's programming, as he never really moved his ships into a more cohesive formation, and that was it for the TEC factions. The Advent were my next target, and if I may say so, they blow up so much nicer than TEC, with this backdrop of the universe behind their bases. Other than that, their planets taste just as good. Yummy resources. Not that I really needed anymore, considering I was now swimming in hundreds of thousands of metal and crystal. But I really loved the animations of my Vasari evacuator capital ships draining planets from orbit. It never gets old. And neither does stripping the planets to their core. I just wish the animation took a bit longer for extra eye candy. Something for the developers to think about if they watch this by any chance. But what they animated just absolutely beautiful are all the Advent explosions, Titans in particular, and I enjoyed blowing up each and every one of these as I hunted them down across the last few active Advent players' planets. Remember when I said my Starbases were winning against TEC ones in 1v1? They actually managed to win such fights against the Advent ones as well. As this match was coming to an end, I enjoyed taking out the last enemy colonies alongside my AI allies, and they gave me a fantastic shot to end this playthrough with, as they jumped in force to help me finish off the last Advent planet and achieve a military victory. I hope you enjoyed both this playthrough and the instructions on how to recreate it in your own matches. For more videos on Sins 2 and other similar games, check out the cards on the screen and in the description below. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!